Hi, my name is Haley and this is my podcast where I talk about all my knitting yarn stuff and kind of just whatever else comes into my mind. So here we go. If you saw my first one, which was my last one, I've gotten a lot done since. I've been very productive and I'm very proud of myself, so I'm just gonna get straight into it. Finished objects. She's complete. Completely complete, ends woven. That's a lie. That's a lie. Okay, so this was a self-drafted pattern that I did out of Lion Brand Lazy Days in I don't know the names of any of the colors, but it's orange, blue, pink, and green. Just a little stripy number with folded hems on the collar, the sleeves, and the torso. And then I have a little, like, I don't know what this is called, raglan line path detail thingy. And one day I'll write a pattern, maybe. So ends are actually not woven because of the nature of this yarn. It's a, maybe it's a chain knit. I'm not quite sure, but it's like a tube and then it's filled in, almost like a stuffed toy. You can kind of see it fraying right here with the stuffing in the middle. So for this entire piece, I just tied little knots and snipped the end because it's handmade, and the whole point of handmade is you can do whatever you want, right? So did not weave any of those ends in. I was nervous about the knots coming out, so I put a little bit of I think it's called like fabric. No, I used the E6000, which is like a craft glue, but it's machine washable. The yarn is machine wash and dryable as well. So I just wanted the glue to hold up because there's no way I'm hand washing this. So yeah, I used that glue and I put a tiny little bit in each knot. Like I tied it once, put it out of glue, and then tied the second part of the knot. So it's kind of like a glue sandwich in the middle of the knot. And I mean, the purpose is served. From the outside, you would never know that I cheated the end weaving. It's a little bit cropped. My torso is not that long, so it's really not that cropped on me, because it looks like, I feel like it looks super short on camera, but it hits like the top of my hip bones, and like my belly button is kind of covered, so I don't know what length you would call that. It's really only cropped if I were to wear like low-rise jeans or something. But yeah, it's super cozy. It almost feels like a thick sweatshirt. Like the way the yarn is made, it feels like fabric. It doesn't feel like yarn. So I kind of like that quality, but I'm just so glad to be done with this sweater. If you look closely, and like I mentioned in my last podcast, I knit this entire thing twisted. I didn't realize that I was even knitting twisted to begin with, so it was not intentional when I started. That's why all my ribbing is twisted rib as well, because just everything I did was twisted, every single stitch. And yeah, so I was far enough to where I didn't want to start over, but still pretty far from being completely finished. So going back to that twisted knitting style just required a lot of motivation and a lot of patience, because it's so much slower than the way you're actually supposed to knit. So I was wrapping the yarn the wrong way, so everything was just tight and it doesn't flow well, and you can only pick up so much speed. But I will say it's a lot easier to knit without looking, which was also probably because the yarn itself like can't really split or anything like that. It's a very foolproof yarn, but everything's so tight and stiff that you can kind of feel exactly where you are at each step. So once I figured out that I could do it without looking a lot more efficiently, then I would just like watch TV and stuff, and it was fine. And we made it to the end. I will probably not ever make another one of these in this exact like twisted plus yarn combo. It's like really fun and stuff, but it's so unique. You really have to plan your outfit with it. Like, I almost have to plan the event as well. Like, I think maybe I could wear this to like a kid's birthday party or something, but not a lot of like places that I want to look like an adult. People already tend to think I'm a kid anyway, and this would just kind of, you know, make that worse. So I learned a lot from this sweater. I love it enough to keep it. I usually frog like everything, but this is going to be kept as is, probably worn around the house. I'm really curious to see how it's gonna wash and dry, because I will be putting it in the washing machine. I mean, it's 100% polyester. I don't know what could really happen to it, and I wouldn't be that crushed if something did. But I don't know if it's gonna shrink. I don't do my laundry carefully by any means. I just throw it in there, and if it's ruined, it's ruined. Which is probably not great, but it's not like I buy finicky clothing. Like, I buy a lot of workout clothes and t-shirts and stuff that's hard to ruin, so the frequency at which I ruin clothes is few and far between. But actually, now that I think about it, I feel like the things that I mess up the most are my husband's sweaters. I've shrunk so many of his sweaters because I didn't wear a lot of sweaters myself. I wore mostly like actual sweatshirts or a lot of like golf pullovers, which are kind of like that windbreakery material. So I didn't really have anything that would shrink, honestly. And I learned what like shrinking sweaters was through shrinking my husband's, which is unfortunate for him, but you know, life goes on. Next thing I finished is this cute little t-shirt. This is from the knitted tee pattern by Oops and Loops Andrea on Instagram. Oops and Loops with the N instead of the word and I made it out of the Miss Babs Yowza in the deep sea jellyfish, and this stuff just gets so soft after you block it. I could not get the water to run clear. Like, as you can see, it's a lot of red tones. I feel like red is notorious for staining everything and turning everything pink. I blocked it in Soak. I think it's just called Soak, in the fig scent. And it was really interesting because originally, like with the soap in or detergent, I don't know if there's a difference, all the water was orange, and then as I would rinse and rinse and rinse, it would get pinker with each round, which was a lot of rounds, to the point where like I honestly can't quite say that I would even recommend this yarn, specifically this colorway, because that was crazy. Like, the water was so deep orange, and then it went to pink, and then I would add a little bit more soap and it would go back to orange and then slowly go to pink. So I don't know what like kind of chemical reaction was going on there, or if the dyes come out in different orders, but it was very, very interesting to see that color change, which probably also contributed to how many times I rinsed this, but it came out so soft. It's superwash merino in a DK weight, so I guess it was kind of already leaning towards the soft side, but it just feels so good. I love it, and it's so cute and little. And it's funny because when I first started knitting this, in my opinion, it looks like nothing like the skein, but exactly like the skein. In skein form, I imagined it to be more of a solid pinky vibe, like almost a tonal that was like slightly more variegated, and then I thought it was gonna have little like kind of flicks of dark spots, but it almost ended up being like tiny little stripes of dark stuff. I don't know, when I started knitting this I was like, this looks like it's supposed to be a sock. I just feel like it very much gives like sock vibes. This would be a gorgeous sock that would probably turn your feet pink. But I went to watch a Copy Cali podcast, Kalila, and I was almost done with this. I think I had just one little short sleeve to go, and I think this sleeve is, I think I only did like 5 rows for the sleeve, so very tiny. And I was watching podcast, which I don't even remember which podcast it was. Yeah, who knows, but it was an old one, like maybe number 7 or something, and she had just knitted a pair of socks, and the color of the socks looked exactly like this shirt. But it's just so cute and soft and squishy, but definitely turned all the water pink for a long time. And I had no color runoff at all in the Garden Party shade, so I don't think it's the yarn and I don't think it's the dyer. I think it's just the specific color. And sometimes I watch chem knits, even though I'm not a dyer myself. I just think what she does is really cool, and I like to learn things that I don't know how to do. And I've heard her mention a couple times that pinks and reds and stuff tend to run off a lot more and are a lot harder to get the water to run clear. So if you love it, I wouldn't let it deter you from getting it. And I have so much left over. I probably have a whole nother 100 grams, so maybe I will make a DK pair of socks. Who knows? No, there's no way I have 100 grams left. Well, I don't know. It's like a I think the original skein is like over 200 grams. So maybe I have like 60 left. Anyway, moving on. I finished my June top. If you watched my last regular video, it was a little vlog on the making of this top, so I won't go into too much detail. This is the fabric. It is dang, I forgot again. I know there's some cotton. I think it's cotton, linen, silk, and polyamide. Polyamide. I think that's the blend, but super oh, this is the back. Super drapey, super like quick and easy pattern. And I think I might actually make another one. It's 4mm needles, which I've learned that I'm not actually scared of anymore. And it went by so fast in like less than a week. So I kind of want to make one in the Noro Kakigori in Naha that everyone but me was able to get their hands on, and may never even come back in stock in this lifetime. But if it ever does, I think that's the only other one I would make, because I don't need a million shirts in the same silhouette. But very comfy design. Oh, by Petite Knit. And yeah, that's that on that. Next, I made this hat for my dad in some Bernat velvet yarn. It's like an Oslo-esque hat, but this is on 5.5 millimeter needles, and I think that pattern is on like 3 millimeter needles, or not 5.5 for sure, like by far. So I had to do a lot of math to figure this one out. I'm giving it to him for his birthday because he lives in he lives in Tennessee, which is definitely not the coldest place, but they have much more of a winter than we have here in LA, and also he has no hair, so hats make sense for him. But look at this. Is this huge? I can't tell. This is the first hat I've ever made, and like I said, I kind of fudged it because the pattern is not written for this yarn at all, or anything close to this yarn. I just had never made a hat before and didn't know how to do the decreases, and a lot of the patterns I found were just like scrunched up and then you throw a pom-pom on top, but I don't think my dad would want to wear a pom-pom on a beanie, so I needed it to be like flat. And originally I had made this with like 70 something stitches. I don't know how well like experienced knitters are with being like X amount of stitches on this size needle, but let me tell you, it was huge. It was one of the biggest hats I've ever seen, and I don't know, it's kind of like still a little bit huge, but it's also very soundproof. Sounds funny in here, but it's so soft and cozy, and I'm thinking it can just be one of those hats that like doesn't fit too tight, like it just kind of sits on your head, but it definitely wouldn't be like a strong wind hat. Like I don't think he'll be able to wear it on a windy day because it might blow right off of his head. But I'm his daughter and he's gonna like it because I made it for him. So yeah, sorry Dad, I did my best, and I can always make another one. And then my last thing is, again, not a complete finished object, but it is a swatch. And I know you're like, what? A swatch? I swatch almost never. Like in my head, it's kind of a risky move and a waste of yarn because I tend to either buy yarn that I just, of course my camera cut off, but I tend to buy yarn that I either fall in love with at first sight, have no project in mind for, or like that type of situation, or I find a project that I love and go reverse and then find a yarn to fit that project. And when I do that, I tend to be right around 1,000 to like 1,100 yards for a full sweater with sleeves in like a fingering DK-ish weight. And I find that a lot of yarns in that weight come with around 400 yards in a skein. So if I get 3, I have almost my exact sweater quantity. Like, I don't have a lot of wiggle room, and I always get nervous that I'm gonna run out of yarn, because it's also based on 100 grams, and although you buy a 100-gram skein, it doesn't necessarily mean that that skein has exactly 100 grams in it. So if I get a skein that's only 95, then I don't have the full 400, and then if I need 6, let's say, for a sweater, because I'm like, I usually hold it double, then it's potentially like 30 grams lost that I never even received because my skeins were under 100 grams. So I just go down this spiral of like, what if I swatch and then 1, don't meet gauge, so now I use that yarn and I didn't even meet gauge. 2, I swatch and I'm like this close to finishing and run out of yarn, and if I hadn't swatched, I would have had enough yarn. So I tend not to, but I did this time because I want to draft another design, which is usually the only reason I swatch. If I'm designing something and I really, like I said, I've only been knitting for 2 months, so I don't have a exact handle on what my gauge is going to be on different size needles just yet. So sometimes I just have absolutely no clue, even in stockinette, like how many stitches per inch is going to come out. And then when you double, like when you hold stuff double and mix stuff up, then the gauge of the yarn itself really doesn't even matter. So I made this because I want to design a sweater for my husband. And I also swatch, because I know you're probably thinking swatches take up so little yarn, but when I swatch like a journal. Like, it's just one continuous train of thought, all in one. So I did my stockinette on 5.5 millimeter needles. This is Cascade Ultra Pima, held double. I don't know the name of the color, but I would like to say it's red. So I have my stockinette here on the 5.5. Then I have some 2x1 rib on the 5.5. Didn't love it. As you can see, relaxed. It almost just looks like stockinette. And then I did a tiny bit of twisted 2x1 rib for only a couple rows because hated the process. The look was okay, but actually knitting and purling through the back loop was not that fun for me. And then you have some 1x1 rib, which I just don't like at all. I think starting as a twisted knitter, seeing untwisted rib just looks like a little bit messy. My eyes aren't trained for it yet, and then for some reason when I was working back and forth instead of in the round, I don't know if you could see, but my stitches are like catty corner. I'm also a combination knitter, meaning that I purl incorrectly. Well, is it incorrectly? When I purl, it's fine. Like, it's a correct purl, but it's one of those situations where the stitch isn't mounted on the needle correctly. So the little purl bump looks correct and all is fine from needle down, but on the needle itself is not right. So I knit and purl, like knit regular, purl wrong, knit regular, purl wrong, and then when I go on the next row, all the stitches that I purled, I just knit through the back loop, and then everything ends up straight. So it's fine. And it's a lot easier and faster, I find, for continental. I just haven't found, knitting continental and purling is so hard. Like, it's just hard. The yarn slips off. There's no hook on knitting needles to really like grab it and pull it. I don't know what that means, but it's just not fun. So I found that combination is the easiest, least frustrating, fastest way for me to not avoid any project that has any purling in it. So yeah, that's how I live my life, and that's how I'll continue to do it. But it did not look good in 1x1 rib. Also, this catty corner, I don't know if that's from the combination knitting, or if it's from working back and forth instead of in the round, or if it's because this is 100% cotton, which doesn't slip and slide as well, because it's honestly not an issue that I've had in other projects or previous. But it didn't look good, and I don't know if blocking it's going to change it, because I haven't blocked this. Then I switched to 2x2 rib, and I decided I loved it. Got a little curious, and around here somewhere switched to 5mm needles, and then I did stockinette in 5mm just to see if there was a significant difference in gauge and fabric. And there kind of was, there kind of wasn't. My stitch count and row count is almost exactly the same, to the point where like the difference would probably be the difference of like putting the project down and picking it up the next day. So I didn't feel like it was worth it to go down to that size, because it's ever so slightly stiffer than the 5.5, and I want it to be comfy cozy. The idea is to have like kind of a classic raglan rib sweater, but also not classic. I'm not sure quite how to explain it, but I think I'm gonna cast it on like today or tomorrow, so you'll be seeing it soon. And then the ideas will come to life. But I swatched it in this red, and I was okay with making a swatch this big, because the original sweater that he asked for was supposed to be black with like, he asked for a cardigan for one, which knitting for myself does not feel like work at all. It doesn't feel laborious, it doesn't feel like strenuous, none of that. When you have to knit something that you haven't even started, and then at the end you give it away, it feels like a job. Like, it really feels like work. And then on top of that, to make a cardigan that you knit entirely flat, like except for the sleeves, absolutely not. It just wasn't gonna happen. And then my mom wants a cardigan too, and she's my mom, so she's gonna get a cardigan. But two gift cardigans in the same year, but there's no way they're gonna be finished this year. But like, they'll be finished within 12 months from today. So 2 gift cardigans in the same year? No, there's no way. And then look at the weight. It was like true fingering weight. This man wanted a cardigan on 4mm needles. No. So this is what he's gonna get, and the red I no longer need, because the design that I have in my head I don't think will look good with the arm stripes. So although this swatch is almost 100 grams, it didn't actually hurt the project, because the project will be in this black. Same stuff, just black. And I will say, this red is so gorgeous. It's such a true red, like a true blue red, like red lipstick, but the cool version. Like, if you, this is a red Sharpie. If you bought a red Sharpie, it would be this color. And it's so shiny. I I think it's gotta be mercerized. It has to be because it almost shines like silk. So I'm gonna say it's mercerized cotton. I know it's Pima, but the black has none of that shine. I don't know what went wrong there or what happened. I have 4 skeins of it and none of them are shiny, so I don't think it was like a skein thing. I think maybe the black just actually doesn't come like that, but the red is absolutely gorgeous, and if you're gonna get one, I think you should get the red. But that's just my opinion. Okay, into my whips. This was the most random pickup. Again, just organza bags. Sorry I don't have good project bag suggestions. I get these from Love Crafts for like 50 cents, and you can see everything in the bag. It's genius. So yeah, that's my suggestion. I started a little like, I mean, I guess you would call it a project bag, but I've been leaning towards knitting some big things, so my projects wouldn't fit in it. But maybe one day when I finish this, I will make some socks. And this could be a sock project bag. I had one skein that I got in Martha's Vineyard of this Lion brand. Summer Kiss? Summer? Lion brand Summer Kiss, that's what I'm going with. And I think this color is called Orchid. It has it's another like tubular yarn, but without the filling. It's just empty on the inside, and it has these little like stripy pieces that are pretty decently spaced, if you can see that. But I'm crocheting this project bag with it, and because each stitch takes up so much yarn in comparison to knitting, the colorful things end up looking like specks because they kind of all combine into just one stitch. So it's looking cute so far. I started this in attempts to avoid the last cuff that I needed to do for the stripy sweater, and I haven't really picked it up since, but it'll be done one day. One day. Next is this even a whip? Honestly, shouldn't even disrespect y'all by calling this a whip, but here I am. Okay, I started my rumble raglan. Is this started? This is a hot mess. This is a hot mess. Okay, I started my rumble raglan by What Lydia Made on Ravelry and Instagram both. I believe it's the same name. This is on 3mm needles. The pattern, 3mm needles. These are ChiaoGoo interchangeables. I don't have a full set. That's a story, but when I do get them, instead of getting fixed, I just get the tips. I have most of the cord sizes already. So I got 3mm tips, which are like not a normal US size. So I had a lot of the clover needles, so I wanted to get like the clover bamboo tips, and they're just not made in 3mm needles. So I had to go with metal ChiaoGoo, which is fine because they're my favorite metal needles anyway. But I did it on 3 because I got this Knitting for Olive Merino. Oops, everything's falling. I have it in ice blue, There she is, ballerina, unicorn purple. How cute is this? How cute is this? So soft and cozy, and it definitely says fingering weight. It's advertised as fingering weight. It's like pushing lace. It's pushing lace. Sorry, everything's falling on the floor. The pattern calls for 3.75 millimeter needles. And you're like, that's not even a millimeter difference. But the smaller you get, the more those tiny little differences matter. Like 3.0 to 3.75 is like going from a 4 millimeter to a 6 millimeter. Like, it's extremely different. So I started on the 3.75 and it was just Swiss cheese fabric. I couldn't deal. The pattern's also made for like, I think it's written for positive ease technically, but suggested to wear with negative ease or something like that. I remember having to read the sizing section like over and over to actually understand what I was supposed to pick. But on the 3.75 millimeter needles, I really did not like the fabric. So I was like, okay, I'll knit a size up, because I had about 5 inches-ish. Don't quote me on these numbers, but I had a significant amount of positive ease in the next size up, to where the shrinkage from going down to a 3 millimeter needle plus the amount of negative ease that the garment could be worn with, I wasn't worried. And obviously I did not gauge swatch. I just started, ripped back, and started over on the 3 millimeter needles. And it starts with a twisted rib collar that I just absolutely hated. I think I'm traumatized from the stripy sweater and just can't be bothered with twisted ribbing. So I did a provisional cast on because, come on, because it wasn't, I like that a provisional cast on lets you see where each individual stitch is. So when you fold a collar and knit together, there's really no skipping stitches. Like, I just go in here and pick up every single one, and then where you have the 2 ends of your crochet chain, you know you're not going to twist it too bad. Like, even if you start here or here, that little 1 stitch twist isn't going to be too detrimental. So it's just a little more foolproof. Started that. I can't remember what cast on the original pattern had. Then, and it's a lot of stitches. It's a lot, it's so tiny. Then I started some of the twisted rib. I don't know if everything's so small. I really don't know if you can truly see how much of a hot mess this is. Started some of the twisted rib, did a little untwisted, did a little stockinette, was off. Like, in this area you can see how I was off in my like 1 by 1 rib count. Didn't fix it, just moved on with life, fixed it on the next round. So it's a hot mess. Oh, and not to mention, I started with the wrong color, and I was just too lazy to fix any of these mistakes. And I was telling myself it was okay, because these are the rows that are going to be folded over. So all this that I have right now is technically wrong side. So I just kept it pushing. I was like, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'll just throw in the blue. I wanted my collar to be in the ice blue. I'll just throw that in and I'll do the blue perfect, and nobody will know because I folded it over. That was going to be the plan. Now I'm looking at it, and even on the 3 millimeter, I just don't love it. I really don't love the fabric that it's making, but I'm a little bit hesitant to rip it back and start over because I know that ribbing itself tends to be a little more holey, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the fabric itself is going to be holey. But I don't know, I can't decide. My other game plan is to mix it with this Knitting for Olive Pure Silk and Cream that I have, which is just like a cream, pretty self-explanatory, and double it up because this is also kind of on the thinner side. But if you've seen the Rumble Raglan, it's a very like vibrant, bright, like fun vibes, and I feel like marling these already kind of toned down like cotton candy colors with a white might, oh my gosh, might kill the vibe. So everything's just been living in this bag for now, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I'm gonna push forward, but I do think I would like the thickness of the fabric better. I was also considering just ordering one of each color again because I only ordered one, but now I'm thinking I may just need to order one of each. And craziness, I'm back. And yeah, hold it double to get a fabric that I really like. But since it's September, I am not and have not bought any yarn. So it's kind of giving me time to think and really make smarter yarn purchases, I guess. And then, oh, so my last whip is this Maudie, M-A-U-D-E, Maudie, by Petite Knit, and she's a cutie. I did not do buttons. I couldn't find buttons that I felt really went with both this yarn and my personal style that I have not quite figured out yet, so I just did no buttons. And then I figured I can always go back and add decorative buttons that just don't close if I really wanted to. I thought about just putting in the buttonholes in case I wanted to add buttons later, but I feel like I won't, and then the buttonholes would look funny. But yeah, this is where I'm at. It is a top-down collared raglan on 4mm needles, and I am holding this Malabrigo Mequita in Valentina double. This is another one of those, I walked into a yarn shop and I was like, what a gorgeous purple, what a soft yarn, let me get it. And had no purpose for, but I think it ended up working out perfectly. If I have enough, I will say I got 6 skeins of this yarn and none of them were 100 grams. Some were 98, some were 96. So I don't actually have the yardage that I'm supposed to have, and the yardage that I'm supposed to have was like exact for what I need for the pattern. So we'll see how that goes, but at least in this case I'm holding it double, so even if I do have to buy a little more, I can just buy 1 skein and split it in half instead of having to buy 2 because she's a little expensive, a little bit. But yeah, I got these cute little, not a yarn acquisition, but look at these little baby stitch markers. These are the Coco Knits small stitch markers in like the circle. When I first got them, I thought the colors were so hideous. I thought they were so hideous that I actually tried to return them. And I live in LA, and it was like a local yarn shop here. I was like, these colors are terrible, and I tried to return them and they're like, oh, we don't do returns. And I looked all over the store, all over the desk, nowhere in there does it say no returns, nowhere. But I was like, okay, I'm stuck with them. And then I saw this pink, this like magenta-y fuchsia on this little tiny one. I had got the bigger size, and I was like, okay, I kind of vibe with that. That's cute. And eventually the colors just grew on me. So I have a pink and an orange one. I just like to mark not only the beginning of round but also the halfway point, so I just know what side of the sweater I'm on while I'm working and stuff. It's just personal preference, but you really only need one. And it's been pretty straightforward. I don't think I've done any modifications. Oh yes, I took out the buttonholes and the buttons, but other than that I haven't really done any modifications. It doesn't tell you how to not do buttons. It tells you how to do the buttons if you want them, but it doesn't say how not to do them. And by that I mean, when you're working this double knit band, it's kind of hard to see from the front, but you can see it a lot more clearly on the wrong side. When you're doing this double knit band, there's areas where you have to come up to the band and then do the band twice and then go back into the work. Because if you've double knit anything before, you know that one round, well, 2 rounds make 1 round. So if you're knitting regular 1 round and then you just did 1 of the double knit, you would have really only done a half, and then it would look kind of scrunched up and like puckered. But there's some sections in the pattern for the buttons that you don't do those double rounds, and they're spaced out according to the buttons. But if you don't do the buttons, you don't know how to space those out. So I just skipped that. I just did double for all the rounds, and then I got lazy like right when I was about to join to knit in the round, and I think there was like 1 round where I just did it once. But almost all of them I did it double, so if you don't want buttons, that's my suggestion. And then you join in the round and you just do the body in plain stockinette. I've realized that I think plain stockinette is nice when you're like finished object oriented. But like I was saying in my June top video, I want to start kind of enjoying the process just as much as the finished objects. And because I've been in that mindset now, stockinette is kind of boring. And I have a long way to go on these 4mm needles. And I just really don't want to lose the motivation, because I think this is going to be such a cute little wardrobe piece. And it's like pink, so it's still colorful, but it's kind of toned down, so it's kind of neutral. And yeah, I just am praying that my future self holds it down and finishes her up, because I'm excited. And although it looks really short because it's rolling so much, I'm like almost at my belly button, so I'm not too far from going back for the sleeves. So yeah, we'll see where I'm at with this next update. But I think I'm going to, like I said, cast on the sweater for my husband, and I tend to get excited about things and zone in and forget about everything else. So yeah, we'll see. And I will say, this is so soft. It's so soft, and for me, it's still a little bit itchy. It's 100% superwash merino, and it's single ply. I don't know a lot, but from what I do know, that's like, you can't get much softer unless you get into like the fluffy stuff. But like for what this is, that has the potential to be pretty soft. But I tried it on to make sure that the neckline wasn't too deep, because I don't have buttons, so it's not going to be able to close itself. And I was like, ooh, it's a little itch on the back of my neck. So we'll see how that goes. But This little shirt I made has given me high hopes that it's gonna soften up a lot, because that superwash as well, and it's so next to skin soft now. So I'm excited. And that is all for my current works in progress. I'm not sure that I will have any of these done this month, but that's okay. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I kind of make up my own deadlines. As far as acquisitions, I'm still not buying yarn, but one little Notion acquisition that I got besides needles is this knitting barber cord in fuchsia, and I honestly think I like the color more than anything else. It works. It does exactly what I needed to do. It slips off the needles a little bit if you're heavy-handed, but I have not actually had it come off the needles in use. I was pulling it to see like how far can it go, but other than that, it hasn't given me any problems. I just love the hot pinkness. And I think that wraps it up for today. We'll see where life takes me, and we'll check back in soon, but for now that's all I have. And yeah, moving forward, it's pretty much just going to be fall stuff. I think I'm going to try to get my plans into one cohesive train of thought, and then kind of make a fall plans video just to see what I planned for, and then go back and see what I actually accomplished out of those plans. So that's probably the next thing that you'll see from me. But other than that, I'm not the biggest reader. I'm more of a podcaster, not only knitting podcasts, but murder podcasts. Is that just me? So what I'm listening to currently is called Morbid. That's the name of like the entire podcast. And then I've been listening to the updated episodes about JonBenet Ramsey. So if you're into that, then you may already know what I'm talking about and want to go listen. If you're not into that, I'm not going to get into too much detail, because some people are like really not into that stuff and I don't want to scare anybody. But I absolutely love that podcast. It's two women, and I feel like they just do a great job of keeping it very conversational and funny without being distasteful, if that makes sense. And yeah, the vibes are just there. Love that podcast. And then I am about to start an audiobook called The Stand-In. I was in Target and they had the physical book displayed, and the cover was just really cute. I have no idea what it's about. I did not read the back of the book. I did not research. I saw the cover. I was like, that's so cute. Downloaded the audiobook. So I'll update y'all on how those are going, and that's about it. Everything I've talked about will be somewhere in the description below. I never remembered to mention that in the moment, but just know it's there for you. And yeah, like and subscribe and come back and chat if you feel like it. Bye.